The sands of Egypt hold secrets older than almost any civilization. Beneath the golden sun, along the eternal Nile, the ancient Egyptians looked at their world and saw not just rivers and deserts, but living gods. To them, the divine was not separate. It was the rhythm of life itself. Every sunrise was a blessing from Ra, every harvest a gift of Osiris, every breath protected by unseen forces. The Egyptians built their world on the foundation of the divine. Their gods were not abstract ideas, but companions in life and death. They explained the cycles of the sun and the flooding of the Nile. They offered hope for eternity, and they demanded respect. In a world where survival was uncertain, the gods gave order and meaning. But Egyptian religion was never simple or rigid. Their pantheon was vast, and gods could change over time. Local deities could merge with greater ones, and new dynasties often elevated their cities' gods to national power. This flexibility gave Egyptian religion incredible longevity, more than 3,000 years. At the center of it all was Ra, the great sun god. Each morning, Ra's blazing ship sailed across the heavens, bringing light and life. Each evening, he plunged into the underworld, where he fought chaos itself in the form of the serpent Apophis. If Ra failed, the world would end. But each dawn, Ra triumphed again, reborn in glory. Ra symbolized life, stability, and the eternal cycle of renewal. Pharaohs claimed descent from Ra to prove their divine right to rule. In truth, to the Egyptians, Ra was not just the sun, he was existence itself. This story alone shows how their gods were more than myths. They were the very fabric of reality. And if you're fascinated by how cultures connect the divine to daily life, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and drop a comment about your favorite Egyptian god. It helps the channel grow and keeps us bringing you deep dives into history's forgotten worlds. If Ra was the god of life's daily renewal, then Osiris was the god who made sense of death. To the Egyptians, death was not an end, but a transformation, and Osiris embodied that eternal passage. The myth of Osiris begins as a tale of betrayal. He was a just and noble king who brought civilization to Egypt, teaching agriculture, law, and the sacred rituals that bound humans to the gods. But his brother Set, the god of chaos, grew jealous. In a moment of treachery, Set tricked Osiris, sealed him inside a coffin, and cast him into the Nile. What followed is one of the most powerful myths in human history. Osiris's wife, Isis, became the symbol of devotion and determination. She searched across the land for her husband's body, defying gods and mortals alike. When she found him, Set struck again, dismembering Osiris and scattering his body parts across Egypt. Yet Isis, undeterred, gathered them piece by piece, reassembling her husband through sheer love and divine magic. In this act, Isis restored Osiris to life, but not to the world of the living. Osiris became ruler of the underworld, the judge of the dead. His role was not to punish, but to weigh the hearts of the departed against the feather of Ma'at, the principle of truth and justice. A light heart, free of sin, passed into eternal paradise. A heavy heart was devoured by the monster, Amit. To the Egyptians, this was not fantasy. It was their hope, their guide, and their warning. Osiris's resurrection also gave the Egyptians a framework for their most famous practice, mummification. By preserving the body, they believed the soul could live forever, just as Osiris did. Tombs were not graves, but gateways, filled with offerings, spells, and treasures to sustain the spirit. The story of Osiris, Isis, and Set is more than myth. It is a reflection of how the Egyptians saw life, death, and the eternal struggle against chaos. Every pharaoh, in death, sought to become Osiris. Every citizen, no matter how humble, hoped for the same judgment, to stand before Osiris and be found worthy. The battle for the living world was far from over. His son Horus would rise as Egypt's avenger. Horus, born of Isis and the resurrected Osiris, was destined to challenge his uncle Set for the throne of Egypt. From the beginning, their conflict was more than family rivalry. It was order against chaos, justice against betrayal, civilization against destruction. The Egyptians saw this myth not as legend, but as the blueprint for kingship itself. The battles of Horus and Set were fierce, stretching across the heavens and the earth. Some tales describe them transforming into hippos to fight in the Nile, thrashing in the water for days. Others speak of Set blinding Horus in one eye, only for the gods to restore it, creating the famous Eye of Horus, a symbol still recognized today for protection, healing, and power. The conflict was not only physical, but political. The gods convened councils, hearing arguments from both Horus and Set. Should Egypt be ruled by strength and chaos, or by legitimacy and justice? Eventually, Horus triumphed. He became the living king, while Set was banished to the desert, forever linked with storms, disorder, and barren lands. The Eye of Horus carried enormous meaning. It was carved into tombs, painted on ships, worn as amulets. To the Egyptians, it represented restoration, the ability to heal what was broken, to bring balance after chaos. Every pharaoh claimed to be Horus on earth, a continuation of that divine victory. And this is where Egyptian mythology reveals its genius. It wasn't just religion, it was a political system. Myths justified power, explained natural disasters, and gave citizens a shared story of who they were. To be Egyptian was to be part of a cosmic struggle, where order had to be defended daily, not only by gods, but by rulers and people alike. This mythology even influenced architecture. Temples like Edfu, dedicated to Horus, were built as living embodiments of these stories. Every column, wall carving, and ritual was designed to reinforce the idea that the pharaoh was Horus reborn, defending Egypt from chaos, just as the gods had done. And so, the grand cycle of Egyptian mythology comes full circle. Ra, the sun god, sails his bark across the heavens each day, bringing light and life to the world. But as night falls, he descends into the underworld, where he joins forces with Osiris. Together, they confront Apophis, the serpent of chaos, and ensure that the sun will rise again. This daily battle was more than a story. It was reassurance that the world itself was stable, that dawn would always follow darkness. Osiris ruled below, a god of rebirth and eternity, teaching Egyptians that death was not the end, but a transformation. Isis, his devoted queen, embodied love, wisdom, and divine magic. She was proof that compassion and intellect could shape the fate of gods and men alike. Horus, the Avenger, ensured that Egypt's rulers carried divine legitimacy, that kingship itself was sanctified by myth. And Set, though cast as villain, was never erased, because chaos, like storms and desert winds, could never truly be destroyed. It could only be held in check. What made these myths so powerful was not just their drama, but their relevance. To the farmers along the Nile, the flooding season wasn't just water, it was Osiris rising again. To the king in his palace, sitting on the throne wasn't just governance, it was Horus continuing the eternal struggle. To the priests in the temples, every ritual and offering wasn't mere tradition, it was fuel for Ra's journey, a way to keep the universe itself alive. Even thousands of years later, we still feel the echoes. The Eye of Horus is carved on jewelry around the world. The myths of death, resurrection, chaos, and justice inspired later religions and philosophies, and the eternal truth remains. The Egyptians saw life not as guaranteed, but as something earned, maintained, and fought for, against the ever-present threat of disorder. That's why these gods endure. They weren't just characters in old stories, they were living archetypes of order, justice, rebirth, and resilience. And in them, we see a reflection of our own struggles. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more deep dives into the world's incredible histories.